Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the web series of Arogya Manthana on Enigma Karnataka Facebook page. We will come live every Tuesday and Friday at 5 p.m. and I am Dr. Jyoti, the president of Enigma, Indian Naturopathy and Yoga Graduates Medical Association, Karnataka, welcoming you all for the webinar this evening. So today, our topic is mental disorders. So any illness with significant psychological or behavioral manifestations that is associated with either a painful or distressing symptom or an impairment is one of the more important areas of functioning. So according to NAMI, that is National Alliance of Mental Illness, it further clarifies what constitutes a mental illness and how one can arise in an individual. So mental illness is a condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, or mood. And nowadays, after this COVID, the mental disorders, anxiety, depression have become so common. So today we have invited Dr. Jyoti Nair to enlighten us more about mental illness or mental health. How do we maintain mental health through yoga and naturopathy? So I would like to give a brief introduction about our speaker today. So it's my humble privilege to introduce you all to our today's speaker, Dr. Jyoti Nair. So she is an alumni of the esteemed SDM College of Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences, Ujjire. She has also worked as a medical officer at Government District Ayurveda Hospital, Palakkad, Kerala. She has also worked as a professor cum vice principal at JSS Institute of Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences, Coimbatore. So she's also worked as the vice principal, professor, and a medical officer at Shivraj Naturopathy and Yoga Medical College, Salem. She was also an NEBH assessor. So she is also the member of faculty of Dr. MGR Medical University for 2 consecutive terms from 2010 to 2016. She is also a Senate member of Dr. MGR Medical University. She has a rich clinical and academic experience of 20 years. She has also presented many papers in national and international conferences. Currently, she is working as the principal and medical superintendent at Annai College of Naturopathy and Yoga Science, Kumbakonam, Tanjore, Tamil Nadu. So on behalf of Enigma Karnataka team and the viewers watching this webinar, it's indeed a great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, Dr. Jyoti. And I would also like to share that we were classmates during our academic study at SDM College from the year 95 to 99, and we've been great friends too, probably researching, thinking on various types of cases. We've been doing a great work, as a clinician and an academician. So I welcome you, Dr. Jyoti, to this webinar with Enigma Karnataka.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti, for such a wonderful introduction. And good evening to all. Good evening to all the viewers. And I would like to thank the Enigma Karnataka for doing such a wonderful bringing up speakers and spreading knowledge about health and within the viewers as well as to the common public. So you are doing a wonderful job, Dr. Jyoti, as the president of Enigma.
Thank you very much.
So our topic is mental health. So first we will see what we understand by mental health. We have spoken a lot about physical health. So today, what is why is mental health so important? So what are the studies that have been done in the field of mental health? And then we will know what naturopathy and yoga can do to maintain mental health, a proper mental health. And some common mental illnesses also we would like to see here. So we'll first see the introduction about mental health.
Yes.
We'll see what WHO. Yeah.
I will start sharing the screen, Doctor.
Yeah, Doctor.
What, is that visible for you?
Yeah. Please ask the viewers.
Yes. I think now it is visible. Yes, we will go back to our shares 1 second.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Jyoti.
Yeah. So we'll see what is mental health according to WHO. So WHO says that mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So this is what mental health is all about according to WHO. So it is put up in a very simple way. So the person, a mentally healthy person, should be able to recognize how able he is. So how able he is in all the field. Like we say in yoga, there are many existence of a human being. So in all those levels of existence, what is his ability or the capability that a individual should be aware of. Second thing is we all have some sort of normal stresses in our life to overcome minor problems that arises in the day-to-day life. So a mentally healthy person should be able to overcome all these normal stresses in the life. Third thing WHO is saying about the work. How should be the work that a mentally healthy person should be doing when he is living in a society or a community? So his work should be productive and fruitful. So whatever he is doing, so that work should be contributory to the society that he is living in. So that is what mental health is according to WHO. So when we are speaking about mental health, so we definitely have to speak about Sigmund Freud. So who is Sigmund Freud? So he is considered as the father of modern psychology, and he is also the person who developed psychoanalysis. So for the treatment of psychological diseases, he defined mental health as the ability to love, work, and play. So this definition of mental health, which was given by Freud long ago, still holds good in our society, in this modern society. So what he says about the ability to love, work, and play. So separately, when we see that, he says that the ability to love should be such that the person should be able to have an authentic and intimate relationship with other people. So the people whom he is surrounded with, his friends or whomever he is, he should be able to have a very good relation. So how should be the relation? It should be authentic and it should be intimate. He should be able to develop such a relation. Second thing is, he should be able to give all the affection without having the fear of losing or without having a fear of not getting that love back. So that is what the ability of love means according to Sigmund Freud. Second thing he is saying about the ability of the work. So when we elaborate the ability of the work, how should be the ability of the work? So the person should, when he is working, he should have a utmost feeling of being generative. Generative means being productive. He should be able to be productive, be generative, so that whatever work he is doing, he can take pride, a certain pride he can take for the work that he is doing, or for whatever he is contributing to the society. He should have a feeling of accomplishment. So that is what he means by the ability to work. The third thing he says about play. So how should be the ability to play in a mentally healthy individual? So it should be like he should be able to enjoy whatever activity he is doing. So symbolically, he has used the word play. So here it refers to the work itself. So he should be able to enjoy the work as a play or as a playful activity. He should be able to enjoy his work, whatever he is doing. So these three are the some representation, some um, things that Sigmund Freud has told. Some points that Sigmund Freud has told about mentally healthy person or how should be a mentally healthy person.
Yes.
So that is about the introduction of mental health.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Jyoti. See, now, these small introduction and definitions are very important, because I think nowadays women, they are, or women or men, anyone in general, they are disturbed. So now the clarity about certain definitions definitely will help them to at least, it acts like a guide, so that they don't get confused what they are and they can just understand the state of their mind. Thank you, Dr. Jyoti. So next we will go about why is mental health so important for us? How does it contribute to our overall health?
So it is very common for us to speak about physical health, but mental health is so important, but it is not discussed a lot. Nowadays, the prevalence has changed and people are speaking openly about mental health or mental issues. Many of the celebrities and all are coming forward to speak about their mental problems and how they overcome their mental problems. So we should first see why this mental health is so important. So we can say that mental health is more important than physical health, because if a person is not mentally healthy, he cannot have a physical health, because cannot work towards gaining the goal of having a physical. So we can say in three words, mental health, it contributes to main three activities of the mind. So one thing is the thought. The thought processes that are going on in the mind has to be refined, and those refinement can only be achieved if a person is mentally healthy. Second thing is about the behavior. So how should be the behavior of the person? That behavior only determines his the activities or his responsibility in a society. Third thing is about the emotion. So thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. So emotions. So we should know where to show the emotion, where to control the emotions. So all the emotional aspects. So we know we are having different varieties of emotions, but we cannot show all the emotions in all the places. So these three things contribute mental health: the thought, behavior, and emotion. So the mental health is very important, because a person who has a proper thought process, behaves properly, and is emotionally under control, he can be very productive, and his work will be effective. He can be a caregiver to the entire society, and his life himself, he can uh, uh, come across all the adapt to the changes whatever comes in his life, and he can cope with the problems, that is adversities that happens in one's life. He is able to cope up with that if he is having all the thought processes, behaviors, and emotions under his control. So that is why we say that mental health is important. Second thing, just I want to say that if mental health is disturbed, if derailment of mental health occurs for a long duration, so because of some minor mental health problems, when they are overlooked, so that may lead to illness. If it is continued for a longer duration, it may lead to serious mental illnesses. So because of this reason, we say that mental health is very, very
important. Yes, that was a wonderful point to note. You know, the mental health and the physical health are interrelated. So you have to keep up your mental health in order to be physically healthy. That's amazing. So next we will go to the, I mean, could you please tell us about this, another point you wanted to add about good health and serious mental illness, which you have already covered. So we will go to the incidence or prevalence of mental disorders. Could you please explain us about that, Dr. Jyoti?
Sure. Doctor, now we are saying, if we are going to test the society, the normal society that we are living in, we should not be surprised to find that among four people, at least one may have some sort of mental, I will not say mental illness. Clinically, maybe we will not be able to diagnose that.
True.
Some or the other form of mental problems or mental issues will be there in a person when we analyze in four people in a society, normal society, our normal surrounding answer.
Sure.
So when a study was done that was published in Lancet, a study was done in 27 years of span between 1990 to 2017 to know about the burden of mental disorders across the states of India. If we are speaking about in India across the different states. So they could find that in 2017, around 197.3 million people had mental disorders in India. So this is a huge, in our population, around 197.3 million people, they had mental disorders. And when we see how the mental illness, how much it contributed to the other diseases, the total diseases, we can say that when they started the study in 1990, it was only 2.5%. But when they reached the end of the study, 2017, it was around 4.7%. So you can see the doubling of the percentage of mental disorders within this 20 to 27 years of span. So there are different forms of mental diseases are there. So we will not go in deep about that, but we can say that the commonest among the mental disorders had more percentage of patients, like anxiety disorders are there. Then there are idiopathic development intellectual disabilities, then schizophrenia, bipolar disorders, conduct disorders. Then comes the autism disorders, eating disorders, then ADHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, mostly that is seen in childhood. Later on, sometimes it is carried to the adolescent and even to the adult age group. We are able to see sometimes ADHD. So such is the pattern of the prevalence of mental disorders in India. Even worldwide, the same prevalence is seen. And we can say that in childhood, the mental illness, when they started the study, it was more. But when they reached the end of the study, the number of children who were affected by mental illness decreased. So maybe because of good parenting skills now, or the parents are more about the stresses what uh, their child goes through, so that may contribute in decrease in the prevalence of mental disorders in childhood. So that was about the prevalence in all over the state. So we'll just put a little light on mental illness in children and adolescents. So what about that? How is the prevalence among the children and adolescents? So we can say that in children, around 12 million children under the age of 18 have mental disorders. So when we see all together, it was around 197 million. Now when we come to children under 18 years, so around 12 million children under the age of 18, they have mental disorders. So that was given by the National Mental Health Association. Now coming to the next point, among the mentally ill children, 5 young people were affected at a time. So when you see the in people in general, 5 young people will be given any time. When you see 5 young people will be affected by some sort of mental illness. So that was definitely a huge prevalence or huge impact of mental illness on the society. So less than 1/3 of the children under the age of 18 who had serious mental health problem did not receive any mental health services. So this only 1/3 of them received the services. 2/3 could not get any form of mental health services. So they were left untreated. So later on we will come to know what are the risk factors if we do not treat the mental illness or mental issues. So we can also see in this study that 1 in every 33 children may be depressed. The study showed that if you see in among 33 children, at least one may be having this sort of mental illness that is called as severe depression. And in adolescents, when we see 1 among 8 adolescents may have depression. So this is a huge number. Only 8 adolescents you are taking, in that 1 may have depression. So that is the condition of our society now. Then we come to the suicide. So we know that some sort of suicidal tendencies goes in the mind of the patient, a person who is having any sort of mental illness. So suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for 15 to 24 years olds, and the 6th leading cause of death for 5 to 15 year olds. So we can understand what impact this mental health is having on the community or the adolescents as such. Then another type of, we were speaking about depression, suicide. Another common type of mental illness that we see is schizophrenia. So that is rare among children who are under 12 years of age, but it can occur if you see 1,000 children. Among that, 3 adolescents may be suffering from schizophrenia. So we can say that if the study was also done in juvenile justice homes. So juvenile homes, when they saw that the number of mentally ill adolescents or children were too high. So it went more than 18 lakh juveniles who were there in the juvenile justice system. They were suffering from some or the other sort of mental illness. So that is, you can see that around, if you see around 1 lakh teenagers in juvenile detention, 60% they had behavioral, cognitive or emotional problems. So that is the prevalence of mental illness in the society among the adults, adolescents as well as children.
Oh, that was amazing. So, finally, what we come to know is more than the physical things what we give, the materialistic things what we give to the children, the emotional aspects have to be definitely taken care of. You have to mold the children with the emotional love, affection, everything, rather than the materialistic approach which is having. Otherwise, how would the prevalence increase to such an exponential rise? In all those 27 years of study in Lancet. That was an amazing paper, I think. And even during the COVID times, I think, Dr. Jyoti, that has increased, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, we are at home, we are stuck at home, we don't know what is happening, waiting for the vaccines and so many things, you know, so many things that are evolving around us and we are not able to find an answer. So I think this, should throw more light to our viewers. Thank you. That was an amazing one. So next, could you please explain us about the causes of mental illness?
Yeah, sure. So we will see the causes of mental illness that according to a study. So if we speak based upon some studies, then the talk will be more relevant, I think. So there was a study that was published in PubMed, that is Etiology in Psychiatry, Embracing the Reality of Polygene Environmental Causation of Mental Illness, which was done by Rudolph and Allison. So according to this, there are 3 major causes of mental illness. So first cause they say are the genetic factors. So the gene is responsible for mental illness. Secondly, they give importance to the environmental factors, that is the surrounding or the environment that may also lead to mental illness. Third thing they say that the combination of both, that is the genetic factor and environment factor, together can contribute to mental illness. So that they say it as gene environment causation. So these are the 3 main causes of mental illness. So we will go in deep of all these 3 factors which leads to mental illness. So first we will see about the genetic factors, how it leads to mental illness. So when you see the genes, there are specific genes for specific mental illnesses. So, and some genes, some genetic contribution, they are less seen in very common psychological disorders. And the genetic predisposition is more for the psychological disorders which are seen, which are not so common. So I will elaborate by saying that the diseases, the common diseases, psychological diseases or mental illness we see are about depression, anxiety. So these are commonly seen. But in these diseases, the role of the gene is less when compared to the psychological disorders which are not so common, like autism, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders. In this, the role of gene is more. So the genetic contribution is of 2 types. So the commonly occurring diseases, they may not have more, the genetic predisposition may not be more, but in the less common disorders like autism, schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, the genetic contribution will be more. So this is what we have seen in the different studies. Now when we further when we see about the genetic factors, we can see that 3 assumptions have shaped the field of genetic discovery. So what are the 3 assumptions that have shaped the field of genetic discovery in psychological disorders are? Severe mental illness is caused by a small number of genes. So the studies revealed that there are not many genes which contribute to mental illness, but very few genes are responsible to cause severe mental illnesses. So there is a second thing they told us, there is a specific relationship between genotype and the type of mental illness. So if schizophrenia is there, so there will be a certain genotype which will be responsible for schizophrenia. The same time when you see bipolar disorder, it may be because of a different gene. But later on, the further study that revealed that the same genetic variant can be responsible for interrelated to many diseases too. So the genetic variation which is seen in bipolar disorder can also be seen in schizophrenia. So that is what the study revealed. The third point that they said was the genetic variants lead to mental illness through biological pathways independent of environment. So they are say this study, the first genetic factor that they are talking about in the study, they are saying that the biological or what we told about the environmental factors that may not be affecting the or that may not be taken as the causative factor for mental illnesses, but only the genetic factor is leading to this mental illness. So that is what they told about the genetic factors. Now coming to the environmental factors. So this we are aware of many we are seeing in movies or even now the news about our Bollywood star Sushant Singh Rajput. That is very it is like for months together the news channels are running that. So he is like said to be he had some bipolar disorders or major depressions. So that can be attributed to the environment. So the environment of a person, it starts from the time when the person is in the womb. So there are pregnancy risk factors that also is taken as environmental factors which can lead to mental illnesses. So what can happen during pregnancy that will lead to mental illness? First thing is infection. So any sort of infection like example syphilis. So that also can lead to mental illness or any other form of brain disorders. Second thing is malnutrition. So we all are aware of that and we will have a good number of slides and we will talk deeply into the nutritional aspect of how malnutrition can affect in maintaining mental health and how the deprivation of proper nutrition can lead to mental illnesses. Then heavy metals. When during pregnancy, when the fetus is exposed to heavy metals, it can also lead to certain type of mental illness. Second thing, this is about the pregnancy risk factors. Second one, we will see about the perinatal risk factors. So perinatal risk factors, what can happen? First thing, that is the baby comes out before completing the whole term. So that is preterm birth can happen without properly the baby is not in the womb for the whole of the term, but it comes out prior. So that is called as a preterm birth. Then season of the birth. So season of the birth, that is there in Ayurveda, in naturopathy, we say, and yoga, we say about the season, how the season can affect the birth. So third thing is birth complication. A child can be born with certain birth complications that can also lead to some sort of mental illness. Third thing we will see, that is about the childhood environment. The child is born, now the environment that the child gets during his childhood. So that can also lead to some sort of mental illnesses. Like a child who is living in the urban area has a different mindset and he gets a different environment than the child who lives in a rural area. That is the urbanicity. Second thing is poverty. So we all know poverty, it has effect on nutrition, on the social status, on the mind of the child, because what goes around him in a poor atmosphere can be imagined by all of us. So that poverty also is one of the cause of mental illnesses. Then maltreatment. So how is it? A child can be treated in a very abusive manner also. So that is called as maltreatment by his parents or by his relatives or in his school or whatever. So that is the maltreatment that he can undergo during his childhood. Third thing is bullying. So bullying is so common nowadays because of the social media. So it has become social media has become a platform for bullying. So that now it is widespread. It is a topic which we can speak for hours separately. So bullying. And the fourth thing that environmental factor that can contribute to mental illness is drug use. So drug use in adolescents. So we are seeing in this case of Sushant Singh Rajput also that the role of drug, how the drug is widespread, the prevalence of taking drugs is widespread among common people also. So those like examples are cannabis and some sort of stimulants. So we need not go into deeply into the drugs, but the drugs is also an environmental factor that can lead to mental illness. Now the third point that we'll speak is about the combination of these two factors. First we spoke about the genetic factor, then the environmental factor. So now the combination of these two, that is the genetic and the environmental factors. So the study says that the gene may not be completely responsible for mental illness, and the environment also cannot separately cause severe mental illnesses. But when these two combine together, the effect will be double, and the person may have severe mental disorders. So these are the some causes, or the three main causes that was described in the research that was.
That was there.
Yeah.
1 minute. I'll just go back. I just had a message that the screen is not visible. So I'll just go back and start sharing the screen again for your. And you can just give an introduction. You can just speak a little while by the time I share your slide. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So now we have finished the causes
Yes,
of mental illness.
you can go for the
Yes.
early signs, early warning signs of mental illness by the time I start.
Yes, sure. So now we'll see what are the early signs, warning signs of mental illness. If we see such signs in an individual or in ourselves, we should be aware that this can be a warning bell that we may be developing some sort of mental illness. So in that, first thing is we have to see if we or our friends, whom we are surrounded with, our people, our relatives, anyone, if they have any sort of personality change. So the personality, we know, if we are with a person, we know how he or she is. If we can see a pronounced change in their personality or a marked change in their personality, so we should be observant if whether he has developed some sort of mental illness. Second thing is the inability to cope with problems and daily activities. So we have spoken about this while defining mental health itself. So the person should be able to cope up with his problems and find solutions for his day-to-day affairs. That is what we discussed in the definition of mental health. So here we are saying that we can say a person may have a mental illness if he is unable. He used to solve all these problems that comes to his day-to-day life in a very easy manner, but now he is unable to cope up with similar type of problems, and he is unable to run the daily activities in a normal manner how he or she used to do before. So then also we should have that there is some warnings. Then the ideas. Third thing is about the ideas. The ideas that the person gives may be strange or something that is not possible in a day-to-day setup, or it is not logical. Such type of strange or grandiose ideas if he gives, we may think about possibility of a mental illness. Then next thing is about the excessive anxieties. We all have anxiety if we have an exam or we have a show something, or if we have a function in our home, we all have some normal sort of anxiety. But if that anxiety is very in an excessive manner, then we should think about something may be wrong with that. And then next is about the prolonged depression and apathy. If the depression, normally we all undergo depression and anxiety, but when we should be careful or observant is when it crosses the normal limit. So prolonged depression, this should be underlined. So we should understand depression for a day or two is not prolonged depression, or it should not be taken seriously. But the depression which is prolonged and it may lead to some other stoppage of some other activities. So such type of depression may be a warning bell for a mental illness. Then if we see any marked change in eating or sleeping pattern, so this is very normal. Anyone can find out this. So the person who used to sleep for 6 to 8 hours daily, but he is unable to sleep properly. Second thing is his or her eating habits. Who was having a good eating habit or a normal eating habit has suddenly become anorexic because of not eating or excessive eating. So such type of eating changes, changes in the eating patterns also should be seen as sleeping pattern should be observed for any early signs of mental illness. Then next point is about next warning sign is about if a person is thinking about or talking about suicide or any way of harming himself, So then also it is a serious condition. We are thinking or talking about harming ourselves, or in a way we are planning to do, or the person who are there in our vicinity are talking about uh, going for a suicide. Next thing is about the mood swings. So today, mood swings, like we all have this variation in moods, especially in women. When we are in our normal menstrual cycles, we have certain mood swings. During menopause, we have moods. The woman may have mood swings. This can be high and low normally, but when it is very in extreme condition, when the mood swings are seen, then we should be careful about it. The next point is about the abuse, drug abuse or alcohol abuse. If it is there in excess, that can also lead to mental illness. So a person who was not having such habits of alcohol or any other drugs abuse, but now he has started it, he or she has started it and is abusing in a very abnormal way, so that we can think that there is something should be we should be observant of the person, and we can think about some mental illness. Then if the person is becoming very angry, is always hostile, and his behavior is very violent, this also should be noted. The last point is the person who shows any of this sign. So we have told about all most of the changes that can be seen if a person is going through some mental problem which may lead to mental illness. So any of this, no, we are not saying about any one. Some like two or three, or if one point we are saying if it is very severe, then we can think about some mental illnesses, and it should be considered as a early warning sign for mental.
Mental illness. Yeah, that was very important, doctor. So we wanted the early warning signs to be explained in detail, and I think we had a separate question also for that. So next we will go for understanding. Could you please help us in understanding the mental illness?
Yeah, doctor. We have spoken about mental health. So why mental health is important. So now we'll understand mental disorders. Why people do not come forward and speak about mental disorders? Why they do not? Because they do not understand mental disorders. The first and foremost thing, person should understand that mental disorder is similar to any physical disorder. There should not be any stigma attached to mental disorders. We'll see later on that when you see the history of mental disorders in in olden times, people used to say that the person, if a person has some sort of mental disorder, he is possessed by some ghost or something, or he blames himself for his condition. So such type of misunderstanding about the mental disorders, and a stigma. A stigma is always attached to mental disorders. So this, what is this stigma? Stigma is a mark of shame or disapproval that results in an individual being shunned or rejected by others. So always the person thinks that if I talk about my mental condition or my mental illness, even to my relative or my friends, so they will treat me differently. They will uh, put me out of their group. That feeling of rejection, that, that leads them to be silent about their condition. That stigma is that a person should understand. A mentally healthy person as well as a person having mental illness should understand about this stigma attached to mental disorders. We should overcome that, and we should be able to speak out about mental problems. Don't go, it will not change into a mental illness.
Yes. So
The patient can. So the doctor, am I audible?
no, there is some problem with your network. There is some problem.
Now am I audible to you?
Yeah, better now. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah. What is the effect that a person has when he has some sort of mental issues or mental illnesses? He thinks that the people.
Oh, I think there was a network problem with Dr. Jyoti. We are not able to, I mean, we have just lost the connection. Yes. Yes. You can unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself. You're muted. Unmute. Yes, doctor. Please go on. Yes, it's audible now. Please go
Yeah,
on.
okay. So we were saying about the stigma attached to mental illnesses. So why this stigma? Because the patient always has the fear that he may be seen as weak. The leaderships may treat him very differently from the other people, and he is having a fear always to get some help. And he also thinks that his career will be jeopardized if he speaks about his mental issues. So that is a stigma attached to it, and the people and the patient should understand that there is nothing wrong in speaking about any form of mental issues. So this is what we were speaking about, the historical views and stigma. The medieval and modern times, mental illness was associated with stigma, and people used to think that the person is possessed with demons. But today we have deep knowledge of mental illness, and we know that this is not at all a sign of weakness, it is not dangerous, and the person who is suffering from mental illness is not at all responsible for his or their situation.
Yes. Yes, Dr. Jo.
So, one more thing I would like to say that the person should understand that this point is very important. We should understand and we should make person who is mentally ill understand that mental disorders are real. The first and foremost thing is the patient does not accept that he is having some sort of disorder. So, like bronchial asthma, like diabetes, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder is also a type of disease. And they are real. Like we accept diabetes, we accept bronchial asthma, we accept arthritis, we should be able to accept that we are having a mental illness. Acceptance of a disease makes the patient half cured of his disease. So first you accept, when you accept, then only you can go for treatment. So first point is mental disorders are real. Second thing is mental disorders are treatable. The person suffering from mental disorder, even though he accepts he is having a problem, he doesn't share or he doesn't go for treatment because he thinks there is no cure or no treatment for mental disorder. So he should understand it is real, it is treatable. And then the third and the most important thing, he should be able to build compassion. We should be able to build compassion for those who are suffering with this any type of mental disorder. So that are the main points that should be understood about mental health and mental illness. So there are certain some celebrities. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they are wonderful pictures. So you've got some celebrity pictures for us.
in our Bollywood itself, we have this Padukone is there, then our Anushka is there, even Lady Gaga, then Yo-Yo Honey Singh. All these people, they were suffering from, they are still like Yo-Yo Honey Singh has bipolar disorder, and Lady Gaga, once upon a time, she was so depressed, was suffering from major depression. She had suicidal tendencies. So Oprah Winfrey, she had a very poor childhood, very bad childhood experiences. So if you get time, you can read about her life history. So it is so motivating, even though her childhood was so depressive, so like abusive, but she overcame all those things, and now she's such a good celebrity who inspires a lot of people all over the world. So these are the people whom should be inspiring to us, and they were bold enough to come openly and talk about their disease and get treatment for their disease. So this should be understood by the people who are having mental illness and the people who are supporting their friends, peers who are suffering from mental illness.
So yes, Dr. Jyoti, that was very nice. I think the children, parents also, we need to tell them about, the child's emotions. We need to tell them because they'll not be aware. They feel every child, is normal, is what they feel. Every parent wouldn't feel, that
that is what, doctor. Acceptance should be there from the patient as well as the people who are surrounding them.
Surroundings, exactly. And we have to spend more time with children. The quality time with children tells us about their emotions. And as they grow up, I think we can definitely, help them if they are, as you said, acceptance and treatable. And everyone should know, as Dr. Jyoti said, that it is treatable. So please don't hide behind the screens, come out. And in case you have a problem, definitely, there are people to help you out. There are doctors, who can help you out of the problem. So now, Dr. Jyoti, I think we will go with the types of mental disorders. So what are the types?
Correct. We may not go deep into the types of mental disorders,
Yes.
but just I'll name some of the mental
Please.
disorders. So autism is there, then ADHD is there, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which are commonly seen in children. Then bipolar disorder is there. Bipolar disorder means there are mood swings. One day the patient may be high spirited, the next day he may be depressed. So bipolar disorders means poles apart will be his behavior. Then borderline personality disorders are there, dissociative disorders. Then dual diagnosis and integrated treatment of mental illness and substance can be given for such type of patients. Then eating disorders, abuse disorders are there, then eating disorders are there. Major depression can be there, obsessive compulsive disorder, like OCD we say, obsessive compulsive disorder. Like an example is like if when you see a person with OCD, he may be having obsession to uh, repeat certain activity like going and washing the hand continuously. Those can be said as OCD. Then panic disorders. So there are certain episodes of panic. So those are called as panic disorders. Then post-traumatic stress disorder. If someone in the family or someone had some accident or any other type of trauma, so that may lead to some sort of stress. So that is called as post-traumatic stress disorders. Then there is schizophrenia. Then there is also some disease. Even suicide, it can be said as a mental disorder. The tendency of having a tendency of suicide can also be termed as a sort of mental disorder.
Okay. Next, the most important part is about the treatment of mental. The much awaited topic is about the treatment in yoga of in treatment of mental disorders, on preserving mental health in yoga and naturopathy. Could you please? I think this is the much awaited topic. We've been all of them are years to cover it.
So first we'll start with the nutritional aspect. How in naturopathy, nutrition can help in treating mental illnesses or having a mental health to increase the health of the mind. So first thing is we should understand that there is now a separate science that is developing that is called as nutritional psychiatry. So the term itself is so fascinating, nutritional psychiatry. That means that the psychological illnesses can be treated using nutrition. So that is the term used for. Whatever nutrients we can have to treat any form of mental illness. So we say that our food is the food is what constitutes our body, and there is another saying which says that our brain is depends upon the food, the type of food that we consume, that makes our brain how it acts. So it fully depends upon what is the type of food that we are consuming. So we'll see in nutritional psychiatry in just not so deeply, but when we say about nutritional psychiatry, we should understand that a lot of importance is given on gut-brain axis. So there is a relation between our gut and our brain. So we should understand that there is a hormone, very important hormone for mental health, that is serotonin. So that is nothing but is a neurotransmitter which regulates our sleep, our appetite, our mood, and even it inhibits the pain. So serotonin, so we can also call it as a happiness hormone. So serotonin, the neurotransmitter, which is helping us for all our normal activities like sleep, our appetite, our mood, even decreasing our pain. So what happens to this serotonin? What is the connection about serotonin, gut and brain? So we should understand that 95% of our serotonin is produced in our GI tract. In our gastrointestinal tract, 95% of serotonin is produced. And this gastrointestinal tract, we know the length and how long is our GI tract. So these are having 100 million nerve cells or neurons. Yes. So those are present in the entire GI system. So what is the activity of this neurons are? They do not only help in the digestion, but they also guide our emotion. So it is a very beautiful aspect. So we are saying the serotonin that is produced in the GI tract, and that in turn they have effect on the neurons that are present in the gastrointestinal tract. So because of this, what happens is the function of neurons are dependent on the production of these neurotransmitters. So this neurotransmitter like serotonin. So this the release of serotonin and the function of neuron is dependent upon the gut bacteria. So we know about the good gut bacteria and the bad gut bacteria. So when the number of good gut bacteria is more, then there is more and more production of neurotransmitters, and this neurotransmitters set positive signals to the neurons lining the gastrointestinal tract, and because of which it have positive impact on the brain. So it signals the brain through the neural pathways. So and thus directly controls the mind. You can see the activity of the brain is controlled by the gut by this system, by this relation of serotonin, the neurons present in the gut, and through the neurotransmitters going through the neural path. So that is the relation of the gut and the brain that is given the utmost importance in nutritional psychiatry. So, doctor.
Yes, doctor. Please go on. Yeah, you can go to the next topic.
Yeah. So when we speak about nutrition, we know about the nutrients. So there are two types of nutrients. We all know macronutrients and micronutrients. So now we'll say, so we know what are macronutrients. So our proteins, our carbs, our fat are our macronutrients. So what is the role of these macronutrients in mental health, maintenance of mental health? So first we will see macronutrient, that is carbs. So how should be our carbohydrate? So our carbohydrate should be having high fiber. So carbohydrate, why we should not complete, always I say to my patient, do not avoid carbohydrates fully unless and until you have certain disease like IBS. So why so? Because these carbohydrates, they help in the release of tryptophan. So what is this tryptophan? This tryptophan is a precursor of serotonin. So we just saw about serotonin. So serotonin is essential for the normal functioning of the brain. So for that, this tryptophan is a precursor. So this tryptophan is released because of carbohydrate, and this elevates the mood. It normalizes, or it gives a happy mood. So the carbohydrates are essential, and we should never ever try to skip our breakfast. So what happens is when we eat carbohydrates which are not having fiber, which are not having high fiber, like your normal maida bread or anything, or any such things, or some drinks spiked with sugar. So what happens is that this will be readily absorbed. This glucose will be readily absorbed in our blood, and it will lead to the release of cortisol. So we all know what is cortisol. Cortisol is released when there is stress. So that will affect our brain adversely, and thus our memory will be, in particular, our memory will be affected adversely. So that is what happens when we eat food that are not having high fiber. The plain fiberless carbohydrates, eating of those type of food, those type of carbs may lead to increase in a spike in the glucose level, and that may lead to the release of cortisol, and that may affect the memory. So we should always try to have high fiber carbohydrates which have low glycemic index, and they help in the normal functioning of the brain and the mind. So this is so some examples of this high fiber carbs are like Indian food. If we see, we have brown rice is there, then whole wheat is there, oatmeals are there, barley is there, corn is there, any form of millet can be added. Wild rice is there, buckwheat, then also sorghum or that is also a form of millet. So and then cracked wheat, we say broken wheat also. So those things are easily available in Indian kitchen, Indian market. So we can utilize those things that are the high fiber carbohydrates. So next thing we'll see about the lipids. So second thing is lipids. Lipids are very important for the normal functioning of the brain. So why is it so? Because lipid or the other important thing about that is phospholipids. So we say the other name of it is essential fatty acids. Why it is called as essential fatty acids and why it is given such importance in our nutrition is because it cannot be produced in our body. So we have to take it from outside. So this is called as essential fatty acids, which is very much essential for the normal functioning of the brain. So they are the major constituents of the neuronal and the glial membranes, which constitute the brain. 60% of the non-aqueous weight of the brain is constituted by this neuronal and the glial membranes, which is constituted by the phospholipids. They are rich in unsaturated fatty acids, and like we know about the linoleic acid, alpha linoleic acid, etc. So they are rich in this unsaturated fatty acids. So they are also called essential fatty acids, I told before, because body cannot synthesize them and it has to be obtained from the diet. So it is very important to have healthy lipids or healthy fats. So we will see in deep about healthy fats later on. So proteins, how proteins contribute to normal mental health. So what happens is the concentration, there should always a physiological concentration of amino acid should be maintained and their metabolites like taurine, nitric oxide and all should be maintained in a normal physiological level. But when it increases, so that may act as a neurotoxic. So because of that, the protein should not be taken in excess because it may lead to abnormal concentration of amino acid as well as their metabolites. There always optimal balance of amino acids in diet and circulation is crucial. So increased immune sensitivity to wheat protein gluten has been reported in some cases of schizophrenia. So some studies were done to know the relation between schizophrenia and the gluten present in wheat. So they showed that there was an adverse relation between the wheat, that gluten which is present in wheat and schizophrenia. So that those are the things that we should take care about. So we have spoken about carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, which constitute the macronutrients in any diet. So now we'll see about the micronutrients. So the micronutrients which are very helpful or which are essential for maintaining mental health are vitamin B, C, vitamin D, and folic acid. So when you come to the minerals, there are zinc, copper, magnesium, and manganese. So these are the micronutrients which are very essential for maintaining normal mental health. So there was a study which was done on to understand the relation between diet and hippocampus. So what is hippocampus? That is a section of the brain that is central to learning, memory, and mental health, and that relies on neurotrophins to grow new cells. So where it was seen that a diet which is very high in simple saturated fat, refined sugars, that had negative impact on brain proteins, and that brain proteins that led to depression. So proteins called neurotrophins, which protect the brain against oxidative stress and promote the growth of the new brain cells, that decreased when a person had a diet which are rich in refined sugar or saturated fats. And a study was done last year which showed that the hippocampus, the size of the hippocampus itself decreased when a person had such a diet which were very rich in refined sugars. So and unhealthy fat. So we can also say that there is a relation between saturated fat and on the stress response. How we respond to stress, that also can be related to the food we eat. So if the amount of saturated fat is more in our diet, our ability to respond to stress also decreases, and it may lead to some sort of depression and anxiety. So I was saying we may go into little deeper into fats. So what are bad fats? There are bad fat and good fats. So bad fats that are present in like we call it as trans fat. So where are these trans fats present? So normally we should understand that any packaged food like bakery items, cookies are there, cakes are there. So all those have excess amount of trans fat. So these trans fat are a type of unsaturated fat that have an effect on the brain health. So these trans fat are also present naturally in meat, dairy, etc. But that may not harm our brain health. So that must that this bad trans fat present in synthetically present in cookies, cakes, or some other bakery items when compared. So these artificial trans fats can be found in snack foods, many different type of snack foods also, or pre-packaged cookies also we can find, as we said earlier. So when people have more amount of trans fat, then there is an increased risk of them to have Alzheimer's disease also, because we know what is Alzheimer's, that is poor memory. So because this trans fat can affect the memory functioning of the function of the brain, which affects our memory. So that, and even the cognitive decline can be seen if we use this trans fat for a longer duration. So just doctor, I will add a little bit about good fat also. So
Yes,
good
please.
fat. So good fat, like we see in avocados, good fat are present, and also we can see when we say about fat, good fat, we have to say about omega-3 fatty acids. So on the diet which is high in omega-3 fatty acids are very good for the health of the brain. So how it helps is because the omega-3 fatty acids, they help to protect against the cognitive decline. So decline in the cognitive function can be prevented by having good amount of omega-3 fatty acids in the diet. So this omega-3 fatty acids also they lead to the increase in the secretion of anti-inflammatory compounds in the brain. So they also have because of this, they also have a protective mechanism on the brain, especially Alzheimer's. We see as we age, the disease Alzheimer comes on. So in older adults, if we give good amount of omega-3 fatty acids, it may prevent Alzheimer's. So omega-3 fatty acid can be increased in our diet by taking food like chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts. So it is I should make it a point that when speaking because we are speaking about naturopathy and yoga as a treatment module. So fish, it is not at all necessary to consume fish to have omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids can also be obtained from other non-vegetarian producers like chia seeds, flax seeds, and other nuts like walnuts.
Yes.
Then there are three major type of omega-3 fatty acids which are very essential. So we already said about alpha linoleic acid. Then there is EPA and DHA. So these are the main three amino acids which are essential for the health of the brain. So we should understand that this ALA can be converted into EPA and DHA. So EPA and DHA may not be produced fully in our brain. So what the ALA can be changed into EPA and DHA in our brain. So what we can do is we can this ALA is present abundant in vegetarian sources. So the recommended daily whatever is the recommended daily this dosage of omega-3 fatty acids can be taken like ALA in the form of ALA from the vegetarian sources by doubling the amount of the ALA that is present in the diet. Like if you are having one half spoon of flaxseed, which contains ALA, which is rich in ALA, to convert this into EPA and DHA, you can have one full spoon of flaxseed.
Okay.
Yes, doctor.
Yes, you can go on. You can go on.
Yeah, so that is about the diet thing according to the modern nutrition and diet therapy. But when we see our literature in yoga, when we see about Bhagavad Gita, so Bhagavad Gita also says about food. So according to Bhagavad Gita, the mind is controlled by food that we eat. So how we behave, how is our mental activity is based upon the food that we consume. So according to Bhagavad Gita, the food, there are three main types of food that we all know, that is sattvic, rajasic and tamasic. So sattvic diet, the name itself says it has some reference to sadhus or that which is very pure, very fresh, cooked fresh, or you can say about the fresh fruits and vegetables. Those are the sattvic diet. Then rajasic diet, Raja, the name itself tells you those which are were consumed by the kings, because the kings always wanted keep themselves very strong, active, because they had to protect their people, their kingdom. So those food were taken by them, which were rich in spices, non-vegetarian foods, which always made them aggressive. So those type of food comes under the Rajasic trait. Then third one is the Tamasic one. Tamasic is the stale food, the leftover food, the cold food. So consuming those type of food will have some negative impact on our mental health.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next, have your slide says about mental health and the benefits of exercise. Please go
Yeah,
on.
yes. So exercise has a deep rooted effect on mental health. So how the exercise, we all know about the uh, hormones that are released during exercise. So we always speak about endorphins. Endorphins are the happiness hormone. So what happens if we do exercise? We need not do 2 to 3 hours of exercise, but a normal 20 to 45 minutes of exercise is definitely able to release endorphin. So this endorphin that improves our mood. It not only boosts our physical and mental energy, but our emotional well-being also is enhanced by this endorphins. So next thing is whatever exercise we are doing. Now we are speaking only about exercise. We are not going into yoga. Later on we'll speak about yoga. So when we say about exercise, so whatever you are repeating, you should be mindful about that. So if you are moving your hands or your elbow joints, so you should be mindful about the activity or the exercise that you are doing. So what happens? It obstructs the negative inflow, like in depression and or in anxiety. What happens is you are very anxious. There are lot of thought processes that are coming into your mind. So if you just concentrate on the exercise that you are doing, those thought processes are cut then there and then, and you will feel a upliftment of your mood. So the worries will be interrupted. That is the effect of exercise on anxiety. So when you see exercise and stress, how exercise helps us in coping with the stress. So whenever you are under stress, you might have experienced that your muscles will become tight or tense. You can see your face itself. So it will be like shrink. When you are laughing or smiling, your muscles are all relaxed. But when you are stressed, the face will be have shrunken face. The face will be shrunken, contracted. The neck, the shoulder will have pain because of the contraction. So, and you will always experience some form of back pain or neck pain. Even headaches will be there. So there may be also tightness in the chest will be there. Some pulsation you can feel. Muscles will be cramping. So all these problems will be seen during stress situation. It may also lead to insomnia, heartburn, stomach ache, even diarrhea, and frequent urination can be seen if you have prolonged stress. So what we can do about this is, so this is a vicious circle. You start with a small cramp and you end up having a diarrhea or urination. So this is a vicious circle. So what happens when you do exercise, this vicious cycle will be broken up. And because of the release of this endorphin, so this will help in relaxing all your muscles. That whatever we're saying, all the muscles on the activities, your face, your gut, everything will be relaxed. And because of that, even your mind will have the tension in your mind will be released. So your body, your mind, both will be relaxed if you do exercise, and the stress can be overcome in a very beautiful way. Now we'll see the effect of exercise on ADHD. So we told about attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So it's seen especially in children. So what happens in this? There will be, because lack of exercise may lead to decrease in dopamine or non-epinephrine and serotonin. But when you exercise, so all this have positive effect will be there of exercise on all these hormones, and that will decrease the problems that you see in ADHD. So that was also, and it will be like equivalent to the medicines that are used in ADHD, like Ritalin and Adderall. Then about depression, we saw about anxiety, ADHD, stress. So in depression also exercise has effect. So we know that we told about the serotonin will be released, and also the negative thought processes that are going on, that can be decreased very well by doing exercise. So there was a study that was done in patients who were having mild and moderate depression. So the study showed that was done in Harvard Chan School of Public Health. They found that running for 15 minutes a day or walking for an hour reduces the risk of major depression by 26%. So this is a very beautiful finding that we all can correlate to. When we go for a walk in morning or evening, so we can see that such a walk for just for 15 minutes, they are saying, or an hour, they are saying, that can reduce depression by around 26%. So that is the effect of exercise on depression. So that is about exercise. So now doctors will go into yoga. So how yoga affects the mentally ill patients, how you can maintain mental health through yoga. Doctor, am I audible?
Yes, absolutely perfect, loud and clear.
Yes. Thank you. So there was a study that was conducted to know about the effect of yoga on mental health. So it was published in the International Journal of Mental Health. So what they did is they used salivary amylase. So this salivary amylase is a very good tool to make out how healthy, how mentally healthy a person is, because this salivary amylase that is released more and more, the quantity of the salivary amylase, that is a major protein component of saliva. So when there is a sympathetic stimulation, this increases the salivary protein secretion, and when there is parasympathetic stimulation, the salivary flow rate will increase. So we can understand that the study based upon the salivary amylase to see the effect of yoga on the participants, it found that the salivary amylase, which is the simplest method to assess the sympathetic activity, so they could find that alpha amylase is one of the one of the major protein component of saliva. Sympathetic stimulation increases the salivary protein secretion, and parasympathetic stimulation increases the salivary flow rate. So these are two different things, the salivary protein secretion and the salivary flow rate. So sympathetic means the mind is agitated. So at that time, the major protein secretion, that is the alpha amylase, will be increased. But when the mind is calm, there will be parasympathetic stimulation. That time, the salivary protein will be decreased, but the salivary flow rate will be more. So in this way, salivary amylase was used to know the effect of yoga on different participants. So this we can understand that stress will induce in increase of the salivary amylase.
Yes. Yes, doctor. You can go on for the yoga therapy slide now.
So now we for common people to know what are the yoga therapies that can be done for mental health. So I suggest a 90-minute yoga, like 1 hour 30 minutes. We can reduce it also according to your lifestyle. So that should be done every at least for 5 days a week. 60 days a week is best. 7 days it is very good. But at least you should be able to do 5 days a week. So what are the main things that we suggest in yoga for mental health is proper mental health is, first thing is asana, pranayama and meditation. So the yoga program should be designed in such a way that the postures that we are giving for mentally ill patients should be very simple and safe, and it should be able to stretch the muscles of the extremities, the trunk and the neck, and it should be performed in all the postures, so like our standing posture, lying down, supine, prone, sitting. So all these postures should be covered in the yoga module that we are going to give for mentally ill patients. So some of the asanas that we can suggest for a mentally ill patient are like standing asanas, simple asanas, Tadasana, Ardha Kati Chakrasana, Padahastasana, and Trikonasana. Sitting postures, Vakrasana, Vajrasana, Paschimottanasana, Gomukasana. One thing I would like to add that we need not make the patient to reach the final position, but at least they should try. Slowly they may reach to the final position. Then the supine position, Pavanamuktasana, Pada Uttanasana. That is Eka Pada Uttanasana and the Dvipada Uttanasana. So this should be made, the patient should be made to do these things in supine position. Coming to the prone position, then Bhujangasana, Shalabhasana. So Shalabhasana with one leg and Shalabhasana with two legs. So I have not given any pictures to this asanas. These are very simple asanas which if there are some viewers who are who don't know about this asanas, that they can Google it. These are very simple asanas, and before doing that, you should consult a yoga doctor for all these asanas. At the end of this yoga session, the asanas, the patient should take at least 5 minutes of shavasana. So now coming to after asanas, we should go for pranayama. So pranayama, the common pranayama that should be practiced by for a good mental health is Kapalabhati. At least 3 rounds should be practiced for 30 to 50 strokes. Nadi Shuddhi pranayama, minimum 3 rounds. They can go for 9 rounds, 21 rounds. Then Brahmari pranayama. So Brahmari pranayama is very useful for mental illnesses. So a minimum 3 rounds of Brahmari pranayama should be practiced. After pranayama, it is very important to go for meditation. Say an Omkara meditation can be done for mental health of some mental illnesses. So that was about yoga, the yoga protocol that can be given for mentally ill patients. Now coming to the naturopathy treatments. So if a mentally ill patient visits a naturopathy hospital, so what are the treatments that we give there? So hydrotherapy, first is massage. So we all know massage is very relaxive. So we give different types of massage so that the patient will be mentally relaxed, will have all the positive feelings, so and will be able to think in a very in a manner that he can be able to solve his normal stresses. So massage is very relaxive. So there are different, we told partial massage is there, even back massage, leg massage, head massage separately when given also has a very good effect in mental illnesses. Or otherwise there is full body massage using, if we use aroma oils based upon the mental illness, that is like for depression, for anxiety, there are different aroma oils that we use. So that is also very useful in treating the mental illnesses. Now coming to hydrotherapy. So hydrotherapy, we have many different types of bath. Like even in normal, simple immersion, full immersion bath also has a very positive impact in the mental illness conditions. Now we come to acupuncture and acupressure. So there are various meridians which affect the brain. So the brain is connected. We don't have any meridian as such for brain, but there are other organs which directly affect the functioning of the brain, and there are meridians which affect the acupuncture points which affect the functioning of the mind and the brain. There are also acupressure points. This acupressure can be given on the acupuncture points, or they can be given on the reflexology points on the face and the palms and the feet. Then there is chromotherapy. So we know that chromotherapy deals with light, and there are different types of colors which are used for treatment. So there is red, blue, green, all those colors. So blue color is soothing and can be given in cases of anxiety conditions. So there is violet color, orange color, which are used for treating mental illness depending upon the type of illness the patient is having. And then there is the last but the most important thing is psychological counseling. So in naturopathy, we do psychological counseling. Counseling is the most important thing. When done in a very positive manner, can have a very good impact on mental illness. So these are the things that we do. I have not gone deep into this, but these are certain treatments that a patient can avail when he visits a nearby naturopathy hospital. Doctor?
Yes, doctor. So that was amazing, and probably I think I would like to just add a few points along with Dr. Jyoti's. One is viewers, in case you have any doubt regarding the asanas, you can please inbox us at enigmakarnataka@gmail.com. We will contact Dr. Jyoti and we will ask her. I mean, in case you have any queries, we will please ask her to clarify your doubts. That is one thing. And second one, in acupuncture, to just add on to her points, as I practice more of acupuncture, I will just add 2 points. One is Buddha's triangle we have, then we have yin tang, K1 and Bai Hui. So these are the most important along with heart 7. So these are the most important, best points. As Dr. Jyoti said, you can do acupressure, or in case you're doing acupressure, you have to take the guidance of your doctor who does acupuncture, not the one who has completed a 6 months or a 1 year course. Definitely you have to go to a doctor. And then the other points is, I think everything was so beautifully explained by Dr. Jyoti. I think we have no other questions left. You have covered everything from the causes, prevalence, and the warning signs. I think every point which was there was, definitely well explained. Though we have taken a little longer time, as we started less, I've stopped sharing the screen, and we definitely had a very good time, discussing and telling our viewers about everything that would come in their mind when we are speaking about mental health, either maintaining or even the differential diagnosis. So, Dr. Jyoti, when we come to the end of the webinar, could you please give us a takeaway message for the viewers?
Yeah. So I would and this I believe strongly that we should, a patient or a mental, even if we have small mental issues, we should keep in mind that you don't have to struggle in silence. So when you are silent, you are struggling, and the mental problem issues that you are having, like similar slide that we saw in the beginning. So the small mental issues may lead to severe mental illnesses. So please understand, this is the most important takeaway message that I will try to give is, you don't have to struggle in silence. Speak out. Please speak out. People are there surrounding you, or there are counselors. If you don't have friends, you don't have relatives, or if you're shy to go to them and speak about your condition, please go to the counselors. Please come to the naturopathy doctor or a yoga doctor, so they can definitely help you. And before, as we said, this is treatable. It is real and it is 100% treatable. So you should not be silent. You should be unsilent. You can live well with a mental health condition as long as you open up to somebody about it. So please understand this. Please do not be silent about your mental issue.
Yes, that was amazing, doctor. So we come to the end, we come to the thank you note. So I thank Dr. Jyoti for making her time for this webinar despite her busy schedule. I know the admissions are going on in your colleges, and this mental health issue or the mental health topic amidst the COVID times, that was very important for our viewers, because we've been getting queries about, doctor, could you please do, can you please conduct a webinar about mental health? So thank you very much for enlightening us about yoga and naturopathic management on mental health. And thank you everyone for joining us today. So we appreciate your presence this wonderful evening, and we will come back with another eloquent speaker on a Friday at 5 p.m. Have a great evening, and everyone, please stay safe.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti.
So
Thank
it
you,
was very
Karnataka.
nice. Yeah, and it was very nice. We, spent some time online amidst the
Thank you.
times, though we would just have going on calls. We came on live, so it is Jyoti and Jyoti together.
Thank you, Dr.
Finally. Yes, doctor. Thank you. So I'll take your leave. We come back on Friday, viewers. Bye, everyone.